Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thank you to Jens for that lovely introduction. As you can imagine, the three of us bring quite different perspectives to a conversation about business skills and business in games, and this is our opportunity to share that with you.
So our core thesis, our sort of core premise here is that we all feel like we're failing our students by not preparing them with basic business and marketing skills. In 2021, business skills are life skills. And throughout the course of their careers, every single student that's going through our courses today will need to know the basics. And right now, they're entering the workforce without them. Today, we're going to explain through each of our unique perspectives why this is true and why it's important.
Okay, so who are we to be speaking about this? My name's Wendy, and I'm the founder and owner of Blue Raven Coaching. And as a business coach, I work with studio leaders who are committed to achieving outcomes, to getting an ROI on the work and effort and capital invested. And very often there's a high level of technical and creative expertise, no lack of intelligence and education, but quite a limited business skills and acumen. Generally, unless they've specifically studied business skills or had experience in a prior business, I spend as much time teaching basic business skills as I do coaching. And this is no reflection on their capability, only on their education, which is so. Joe, do you want to tell us what your perspective is?
Yeah, thanks for that, Wendy. Yeah, I went through a double degree at Swinburne in comp sci and games. I then went and started my own business. I worked as a games tutor at Swinburne. And now I'm studying a postgraduate degree in business, kind of making up for those skills I didn't learn in my undergrad. So I got firsthand knowledge, kind of the whole spectrum of this problem, and how not learning those business skills early on in undergrad kind of impacted later on. What about you, Liam?
My name's Liam Esler. I'm the managing director of Summerfall Studios, which is a Melbourne-based game development studio. And I've been in the industry about a decade in a huge variety of different roles. But the ones that are relevant here are that I worked with the Game Developers Association of Australia for several years, running Game Connect Asia Pacific, which is the Australian Game Developers Conference. And generally supporting the industry through advocacy, working with Tony Reid and the GDAA. And through GCAP and then working with the GDA and supporting a lot of Australian studios, I got to see a lot of patterns, some good, some bad. And one of the significant patterns of failure that occurred fairly regularly with new graduates was just a lack of business skills and ability to understand what things like marketing are.
So what are business skills? We're defining business skills as the skills required to run a successful business beyond the creation of the product itself. Product creation is one crucial aspect of a successful business, but other critical areas include marketing and sales, which is about ensuring that the product generates revenue, people, the hiring, managing and firing of staff, and managing other important relationships such as vendors, investors, shareholders, player communities, and every other person that a business touches. Financials, the flow of money to and through the business and compliance with government obligations. And operations, the day-to-day running and decision-making within a business, which keeps it all flowing. Underpinning all these activities are leadership and culture, which are the driving forces of a successful business. What are your perspectives, Joe and Liam?
Yeah, so for me, marketing isn't just about defining a target audience, like a list of demographic data at the start of a project, or even, God forbid, at the end. Marketing is about understanding from the start of it all the way through, like, who is your audience? What are you trying to serve? What need are you trying to fulfill? So that's like figuring out what market segments exist, which of those you're actually going to target and why. Like, is it just an underserved market and that's why you're going to make a game in that space? And then how are you going to position that? Is it that most games in this genre are more hardcore and you're going to aim for a more casual audience, and that's how you're going to differentiate against what else is already out there in the market? I think it's getting students to understand beyond like the 4 Ps, like product, price, placement, promotion. Got there. Sorry, I'm going to try and go off the cuff. It's just, yeah, it's about understanding beyond demographics, but like what marketing actually means.
So I think the only thing I would add to that is, when we talk about marketing in most game development courses, we normally refer to marketing as like social media or PR or advertising. And marketing isn't any of those things wholly. Marketing is a process that begins before ideation of the product. Like it's something that carries through the entire process. And it's crucially important to understand right from, deciding who the audience is through to advertising your product after its launch. It's quite an extensive and important part of making any game. And unfortunately, exhibiting at PAX is not really marketing. And that is sort of what we're currently teaching our students. And we think that that's actively detrimenting them. We want to make sure that the next generation has a better and more comprehensive understanding of what it means to make games, which in 2021 is also marketing. So there's a broader question here, which is, Joe and Wendy and I have all said in various ways that, we believe that, students nowadays need business and marketing skills. But why is that relevant? How is that important to Australian students today? Wendy, do you want to start us off?
Look, given the landscape of the Australian game industry, most practitioners will spend time as either contractors or as founders and co-founders of studios, if not both. These are business roles. While technical and creative expertise may lead to a valuable product, business and marketing skills are required to leverage the product for success. Making a game is not running a business. Releasing students into the industry without business skills sets them adrift without any way to navigate the landscape. It's like giving someone a license in a car without teaching them to drive. Pretty terrifying for everybody. And without it, they're really at the mercy of whoever is either the loudest or the meanest or the kindest. And that can be really a lot of luck associated with being successful in that situation.
So when I think about why it's so important for game development students to understand business skills, I think the main area I always think about is marketing. I think the most fundamental idea the students need to understand is that a commercial game is a product like anything else. And like any other product, it needs to fill a market need or want. Like hobby projects, artistic projects are great, but they just need to be viewed very differently, and students need to know the difference. Successful commercial games have an audience, and there's marketing skills that we can teach them that will help these students find, target, and build that audience. Ideally, these business skills should be taught in a similar way to how production is taught, giving students kind of a baseline understanding so that at best it sparks a passion in them. They want to go off and build these skills on their own through a postgrad degree potentially, and they can start their own studio or a whole host of other things, or at the very least they end up being a more well-rounded professional who can speak in marketing terms to other people at the studio. Kind of like an artist who understands programming can talk about tech art. Like it's kind of viewing business as part of what being a game dev is. And then finally, for students who want to learn the business side of games, like university really should be a place where they're introduced to these. Like for me personally, I was lucky enough that my father ran his own small business for pretty much my entire life. So I was introduced to these things at a young age, but I imagine there's students out there who don't have that privilege. And at university might be the first time they actually can understand that, they can build a business and build games that way and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I'd also add that marketing and business skills aren't just relevant for people who want to start studios. They're now relevant in almost every discipline of game development, from narrative design to, mechanics design, technical design, through to programming, through to, actual marketing or PR, advertising, etc. Now more than ever, games is an incredibly saturated market. We're competing with platforms like Netflix. We're competing with each other and film and TV. And every part of a game has an element of marketing. For an artist, for example, they need to understand how to appeal to the audience that they're doing their art direction for. So how do you do that? Well, you need to do market research. You need to understand the products in your field. You need to go and look at the other games that your audience plays and best understand, they're really like for young kids, what are the current trends in visual design, how the companies do this. If you're making an RPG, you need to understand certain things about how they're designed, what current trends are. All of this is marketing. It's about picking an audience and creating something for that audience. And it's applicable across almost all disciplines. So it's relevant for all disciplines. Someone who understands marketing and audiences is, as Joe said, a better, more well-rounded employee. And particularly as the Australian industry moves towards a model not unlike film and VFX, where there are more and more contractors, the business skills part of it becomes crucial as well. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's crucially important that we're not teaching these skills just to people who want to start studios, but also to, you know, designers, programmers, artists, narrative designers, and then also giving them some of the basics of what it means to start a business, because that's crucial for contractors as well. And if we do move down that road, which the industry looks like it will, we need to protect the next generation of students, and we need to arm them effectively so that we're giving them the best shot at success so that they're not taken advantage of.
I couldn't agree more, Liam. And when we think about the impact of the lack of business and marketing skills, the issues are only going to be exacerbated over the coming years, thanks to the 30% fabulous tax offset. So when I think about this, I define success as being able to sustainably continue what you've set out to do. And I like this definition because it really depends on what you set out to do. If you set out to sustain a hobby, you expect it to have a financial cost. Whereas if you set out to sustain a business, a computer game business, you expect to have a financial return. Having a hobby is easy, whereas having a successful studio, on the other hand, requires that you are motivated by both a creative and a financial outcome, and it's much more complex to manage. So without business and marketing skills, you have no idea where you're heading or how to get there or whether or when you've arrived. There's no direction or strategy. And so while people in the industry often talk about luck as if it's a strategy, decent business and marketing skills reduce the number of superstitions you have to rely on. Luck isn't a strategy. It's just a lack of education and a lack of having considered the skills that you need in order to twist things in the direction of luck, really. Right. Instead, with appropriate skills, you create measurable goals, iterate towards them, and you know whether you're going to achieve them before you get there, so you can adjust or pivot. While success is not guaranteed, it's far more predictable.
Yeah. So the analogy I always try and use when it comes to the importance of marketing and games is that it's like playing pin the tail on the donkey. If you don't do any market research beforehand, you don't even know if you're facing the right direction. Whereas, yeah, once you've done the research, at least you know you're pointing at the donkey. Yeah, so one of the other impacts of the lack of business and marketing skills is that you end up just learning through your peers and other people in the industry and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But it means that if you're not lucky enough to be included in those circles or discluded, you don't get insights and you don't have the opportunity to learn. And that, yeah, just reinforces existing trends in who's welcome in the industry and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of creates its own problems.
And honestly, that happens all the time. I pretty regularly have graduates and students sort of who don't have any existing connections in the industry come to me and ask me for advice on this stuff. And obviously I try to give them as much time as I can, but I also run a company and I don't have a whole lot of free time. And that's true of a lot of senior people in the industry. So those echo circles tend to be amongst people who haven't been around for very long. And so there's also a lot of misinformation that's passed around. Another thing I would add to, which I mentioned earlier, which is, you know, games is moving towards a filmic and TV-like model and VFX as well, of sort of hiring up from a base of contractors and then scaling back down again at the end of the project. And as our tax offset, which is great and is going to do brilliant things for the industry, sort of comes into effect, it does mean that there are going to be more opportunities for unscrupulous employers to take advantage of our students. Whenever Summerfall, the company that I co-founded, hires young graduates, and particularly as contractors, I spend a lot of time having to educate them on the basics of being a contractor. That's not an ideal situation. It's great for them that I care, and I'd like to think I am nice about it and I'm trying to do the right thing, but routinely people don't understand legally what being a contractor means. They don't know their tax obligations. They don't know how to invoice. They don't understand, what is and is not allowed in that relationship. And when I think as we move forward, like a majority of graduates are going to enter into these spaces, we need to be arming them with information about what is legal and what is not legal. I'd say 2 out of 3 graduates who give me invoices, I have to go back to them and ask them to double their invoices. That's not what should be happening. And again, like I wish more people had done that for me when I was starting out. But we need to be educating students on the basics, what is minimum wage? What is minimum with contracting? Like you can't just charge $15 an hour, which is not uncommon and pretty horrendous. So it doesn't just affect people who want to start businesses. It's going to affect almost every part of the games industry, particularly if we do end up moving towards that model of development, which doesn't seem that unlikely. And I don't want our students to go into those situations and get abused.
Look, Liam, I think this is a really important point about contracting. I, interestingly, haven't coached anyone working as a contract in the game industry. And I think that's partly because they don't see themselves as running a business. It's a stopgap while they try to find a real job. And the reality is that the demand for contractors is only going to increase, as you said, as teams are brought together for projects and then disbanded. And if they're fortunate enough to stumble across someone like you, who's prepared to both hire them and school them on how to be in the business of how to be a contractor, then that's just good luck again. Otherwise, they're reliant on trial and error and are hugely vulnerable to misuse. And on the other side, studios that I do work with often don't understand their responsibilities as contractors. And it's a really fine point as to whether someone is a contractor or a casual employee, but a really important point. For the employer. So a lack of business skills is both a risk and a missed opportunity, especially since marketing is a key aspect of a successful business and therefore a key aspect of being a successful contractor. So Joe, as a person in this group who has the most lived experience of the impact of business skills, it'd be really cool if you could talk about that experience.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, I definitely felt like when I left university, I started Harmonious with the rest of my team. It felt like we jumped into the deep end of it. And we're very lucky that it was such a welcoming industry and we're surrounded by people who were there to support us. But yeah, we really didn't know anything when we first started out about what we were trying to do. And yeah, I think that definitely set us back quite a while. Yeah, and so it would have been really nice to have, particularly the marketing stuff. I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, is because yeah, I feel like I still graduated just thinking about the demographic side of marketing, and you're targeting a male aged 20 to 40 and blah blah blah. And it's just like, yeah, I now understand through having got extra education in a more granular sense.
Joe, I would totally agree. And like all of my experience of learning business skills and marketing skills was done through, getting to know people, as you mentioned earlier, and being lucky enough to be included in the sort of the in-group and getting to know the industry. I was lucky enough to have lots of people who gave me very basic advice. Things like, cash flow is really important. And most people, I guess, don't understand what cash flow is. But if I had have understood what cash flow was as a concept, it probably would have saved me like 2 months of my life running Summerfall. It's not a particularly complicated concept, and it can be easily taught along with project management because it's just the allocation of resources over time. But that's important to know for both a business and as a contractor. And there are lots of skills like that if we could fold them into our education would really benefit everyone in the industry.
I really understand where you're coming from, Liam, and I'm really interested in your use of the word luck, because we use luck a lot in this industry. And I want to push back a little bit on that note, because I know you and I know that luck isn't the only element of your success. You're an awesome networker. And that is a classic business skill. But often we don't think of what a classic business skill it is. And it is one of the things that pushes luck in our direction. And so I wouldn't like to undersell the value of your network and the value of being able to communicate, which sounds like a life skill and sounds like it shouldn't need to be taught as a business skill, but actually is a very crucial business skill. Being able to communicate, being able to network, being able to articulate clearly what you want to achieve, understanding what success is for you and your studio, being able to get people to buy into the vision so that they'll come on the journey with you, and being flexible enough to tweak that vision so that more people can engage in it. And while we often think that these are not business skills, they really are, because without the clarity of direction, there's nowhere to take a business to.
To sort of pull things together, I want to throw down a bit of a gauntlet, one of which is the first educator to release a proper games entrepreneurship course is going to win. They win this battle. It's one of the biggest needs that we have right now. So like, if you can make that happen, please do. The second gauntlet is that these business skills are life skills. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. We need to have an understanding of basic marketing beyond PR and social. And we need to have a basic understanding of business. What is a business? How does it function? What are the legal considerations? How does contracting work? What is employment? These are really important things. They're important things to understand. And for all of us as educators, and I include myself in this, it's crucially important that we impart this to the next generation. The Australian industry is about to undergo some significant changes. We want to make sure that we are giving our students the very best shot at being successful, and that we're giving the Australian industry the very best shot at being successful.
So thank you, IGEA, for inviting us to do this talk, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to why we think business and marketing skills are so important for today's game dev students.
And I want to especially thank Liam and Joe for coming on board, because this could have been a spiel from me, but I think there's much more value in hearing different perspectives, especially lived perspectives, and we have 3 really different lived perspectives. Hopefully what we've brought to your notice will be useful, and you'll be able to take on board the notion that you have a lot to contribute to the industry beyond enabling technical and creative skills to be top-notch. I'm pretty sure we have questions after this, so we'll probably be talking to some of you, so looking forward to that too. Thanks, and thanks, IGEA.
So